Hi, welcome to the Big Smith News Watch. My name is Savitri Lakeram. This is Focus, and today we're here with the Director of the Competition and Consumer Affairs Commission, Mr. Anil Sukhdeo.
It's always a pleasure, Savitri. So today we're going to talk about the process of an investigation at the Competition and Consumer Affairs Commission.
Okay, before we get into that, could you please tell us a little about the Commission and what it does?
Right, so we're a state-funded agency. We're funded through the Ministry of Tourism, Industry and Commerce, and we are responsible for consumer protection and competition protection under two pieces of legislation in Guyana. Those are the Consumer Affairs Act and the Competition and Fair Trade Act. So as it relates to consumer affairs matters, how do you think we go about processing an investigation?
Okay, so in a previous interview, you would have mentioned to us that first a complaint has to be made,
Right.
and then it goes into investigation.
Right, that's correct. So the first step begins with a complaint. As an enforcement body, we need something substantial to act on. So your written complaint is what we act on. So as a consumer, if you know your rights were not enforced when you were shopping, you feel free to log on to our website or come in directly into our offices. We can have a complaint submitted both online and in person. So we first will take your complaint, and then we'll check see if we have jurisdiction over that matter, because there are some things that we just simply can't investigate because there are other agencies that investigate those services or goods. You want to hazard a guess as to which service or product we might not be able to investigate?
I'd say things like fresh food.
Right, that's correct. So food comes under the Guyana Food and Drug Analyst Department, and telecommunication services, particularly comes under the Public Utility Corporation. So that electricity and water also comes under PUC, as we would call PUC for sure. So once we've established that we have jurisdiction, and we take that written complaint, we then we take a statement, of course, and we then reach out to the supplier. We'd also take a statement from the supplier, and we would, of course, compare those statements to see whether or not what's being said is true. So we also would need a number of items. We need your product. If it's a product, we need to have your product lodged with us, and we of course need evidence such as a receipt or something that would have shown that you purchased this item from this particular service provider. So after we would have taken statements and verified that you indeed would have purchased this item from this particular place, what do you think would come next? It's really simple investigative procedures and rules. So at the step, we have the statements, we have the documentation. What else? Let's say the product is it's not working as it should. What do you think we would do with that next?
Well, once you would have verified that the product is defective, I would assume the next step is to head to court.
So that's actually partially right there. So we have to establish that that product is indeed defective. So we'd have to hire an independent technician or /expert. Let's say it's a television and it's not powering on. Is it your fault? Is it the manufacturer's fault? Is it the supplier's fault? So it could be liability could fall onto any different number of parties. Your supplier, it could be the transportation service you might have used. It could be the manufacturer's defect, right? So we have to ascertain that before we move forward. So depending on what we ascertain during that independent expert analysis, we could close the case. We could close the case if it's indeed consumer liability. Let's suppose you buy a television and it's not due voltage, and you plug it in, let's say 220, and it doesn't work. Whose fault is that?
Right? It's you as the customer.
Right, so as consumers, we have to be careful when we're shopping and know how to use our products safely. And it's not always one particular fault. It could be your fault, it could be their fault. Sometimes we can't determine liability, and we'd have to close the case. So let's say that in the case that it's one where we can't determine liability. What we move next, or it's joint liability. What we move next to is we move to have a mediation to see if the parties can come to a settlement, because we want both parties to walk away from this very happy and feeling satisfied with our investigation. So we'd move to a mediation. So we'd sit everyone down and we'd lay out the facts of the matter and say, this is the product, this is what happened, let's see if we can come to a settlement, because both parties would have lost in the case. If it's a liability issue, no liability can be determined. So we'd sit them down there, and if that doesn't work, what do you think the next step would be? We'll move to what we call a hearing or an adjudication, where we have our panel of judges. They're experts in their areas of profession. So we have a few lawyers on our panel, political scientists, and an economist. They're highly qualified ones again. They'd sit the parties down. Parties would then have legal representation if they choose to have legal representation, and the proceedings would follow similar to court proceedings, where everyone would be called upon to present their evidence, present eyewitnesses, and cross-examine the other parties' experts and eyewitnesses and evidence. Now let's just suppose the panel of adjudicators, they do have a finding. They can find that yes, maybe it's again no liability, joint liability, or it could be consumer's liability or supplier's liability, and they'll determine, of course, what the best course of action is. They could say X party is to pay Y party, or they could just close the matter and say it's closed as it is and no one is responsible. But like all tribunal or panels or appellates or any sort of similar proceedings or court structures or decisions, the decisions of the commissioners, the board of adjudicators, it can be appealed by the high court. So if you're not satisfied with a decision made by the commission at the level of the adjudication, you of course can appeal that at the level of the high courts. So it's not that our decision is final as it is. Any decision, anything that we do at the commission can come under judicial review, and our decision can be appealed if you feel you were treated in a way that you should not have been treated. And that's why we have procedural rules. It's there really to highlight the process, to show transparency in what's being done and how it's being done, so that all parties, when they walk away from it, they know that the process was fair and everything was transparent from the beginning and straight to the end. That there covers the entire process of our investigation, straight to the adjudication of our matter. Right, so some matters are very simple. We can close matters at almost any stage, and it's better for us when we close them at the inception or the first few stages. Sometimes we reach out to a supplier and they close it right away. They would say yes, it's our fault, and we can remedy that correctly. Sometimes we can't take the complaint because the complaint doesn't fall under our jurisdiction. It's something that comes under the Public Utilities Commission or the Guyana Food and Drug Analysis Department. We've closed cases at mediation. We've closed cases after a few months of back and forth. And these are high-valued cases, right? They're in the millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So a few months is not anything that the parties they're not too concerned about when that amount of money is involved. And we've closed cases at adjudication, but those are very few. We've only had at the most we'd have like one or two, because we close most of our cases before they reach that stage, or at least we try to.
Okay. And there you have it, the process of investigation. Mr. Sukhdeo, thank you very much for your time and this information.
Thank you.
Until next time.